Hello and what is up, YouTube? It's your balding, beardless buddy here, G3 Iron, and I have been gone over the weekend traveling with family to go search out a new home for new work in a new state. And so I've been away and have not been able to league start. So I have been peering into the void, as it were, looking at what the opening weekend of the league has looked like through my cell phone as I've been between meetings and between house visits. And what I'm doing here today in today's discussion is we're going to look at like 7 or 8 different things that folks are reacting to and chatting about. Some good things that are going on inside the Crucible League, some really interesting mechanical things that are going on inside the Crucible League, as well as some cool stats and some brief introduction about what we're going to be doing here over the next week or so. So without any further ado, let's jump into some of these pieces of news. So first off, there is this wonderful, wonderful post that came out over the weekend. It is a build theory that grants you hit immunity with the new jewel, Blood Notch. Now, there's a couple of different things that you need to do to set this up. All of the links, by the way, to everything that I'm going to talk about today in our little weekend roundup are going to be included down below in the video description. So here's the way how things work. This is by Electrical Sort 5586. He simply says, when you take a hit with a 2120 Petrified Blood, that's level 21, 20 quality Petrified Blood, you take 60% up front and 30% over 4 seconds. This is talking about the damage from a hit. You're going to take 60% of it up front, and then 30% of it is going to come over the course of 4 seconds. By taking a stunning hit with 30% recoup, recover 30% of hit taken over 4 seconds, and a max rolled Blood Notch Jewel, which rolls up to 60% of the hit recovered, you receive no damage from stunning hits. Now, you might be saying, okay, but who wants to get stunned, right? Nobody really wants to get stunned. Well, that's true. Nobody wants to get stunned, but Electrical Short has actually figured out a way to make it so that way when you do get stunned, you essentially don't have any of the stunning effect of being stunned. Essentially, your character still gets to progress. So here he's showing off the different mechanics on the clip, and then he goes in, walks up to a pack. This is in a tier 16 map, by the way. Magic pack in a tier 16 map. So this is like no joke here, right? He's taking hits. You can see he's losing life, but because of that Petrified Blood and because of his recoup, like his Petrified Blood life is going down, but he's recouping, he's sustaining. Essentially what this tech does is it means anything that does not one-shot you is not going to kill you. So here's the rest of the combo. Taking the ES Mastery, which makes your stun threshold based on your ES, and taking Agnostic to set your ES to 0. That's pretty clever. So now you've got a pool of 0 for a hit to actually roll stun chance. Basically every hit stuns you. Right? Now, this is where it gets tricky a little bit. So you're always stunned. So how do you actually move? Therefore, you are effectively immune to hits. Adding the Immutable Force Jewel, which grants up to 1,000% stun recovery, basically allows you to move around and attack, cast, business as usual. Now, here's the thing. I've got Immutable Force pulled up here on another screen. This is what the search results are at the moment. 39 at the moment of recording, by the way, not at the moment of release of the video. 39 results in Softcore Crucible League. Now, the cheapest is 2 Chaos. So you're going, hey, that's fantastic. Yeah, but this thing can roll between 500 to 1,000 on the percent increase stun and block recovery. If you want one that's closest to perfect, it's 1.5 Divines. 2 Divines, 70 Chaos, 1.1, 60. So I'm going to imagine these prices will only go up as people figure out how to mess around with this mechanic more on more different builds. There might even be ways to mess around with something like this where you essentially don't have to commit quite so many different pieces to making this work. But I wanted to show this off early. This is really, really cool. Okay, as Electrical Short also says, you want a large enough hit pool because you are going to take your hit before all the recovery stuff starts happening, right? So in the video, he's got roughly 1,700 life that's still available-ish, roughly. He's got 1474-ish right there. Before he gets hit, what does he have? Yeah, he's got 1474 reserved, so 2,000-ish life. And then you can see throughout the video, he gets hit, but he's recouping it. He's recovering it. Basically, anything that's not a single one-shot because of the way how all these mechanics are lining up, as long as he's getting stunned with each of these hits, which he is, he's not going to die. So you can imagine how sick this is going to be on multiple different things. There's a lot of different tips and tricks that players are sharing in this thread. I'm going to leave this particular little tech right here for now, but this looks really good. This looks like build defining, potentially. I don't want to be hyperbolic here. Well, why not? What's the worst that's going to happen? One of you is going to make fun of me, and that's fine. You already are going to make fun of me. This could have the potential to be something like aura stacking during Delirium, right? Where everybody figured out, oh my goodness, here's a way that you can add aura effect and reduce mana reservation, and just boom, you can just have 1 billion auras stacked, and then everybody was playing it. Like, this sort of thing has that sort of potential. If the only thing that can kill you in Path of Exile is one-shots, legitimate one-shots, by the way, a lot of players who are maybe veterans or maybe newer players are going to go, well, I die to one-shots all the time in Path of Exile. A lot of the time, you're not actually dying to a one-shot. You're dying to multiple hits that look like a one-shot, but it's not actually a single shot. So anyway, this is very, very powerful, very, very interesting. Okay, second mechanical thing that's really cool. This is on Xantho POE. So I'm going to go ahead and subscribe to his channel and ding the bell, which, by the way, you should do as well. Both for his channel as well as for this channel, if you're finding the information helpful. Vengeant Crusade is an anointable passive on the passive tree. It is only anointable. Let me pull up POB here. Go back over to the tree. This is only an anointable option for, it's not Vengeant Crusade, it's Vengeant Cascade. It's over here near the Deadeye, near Pathfinder, all this stuff. Vengeant Cascade. It costs an amber and 2 golden oils. And what it gives you is 15% increased projectile speed. Attack projectiles return to you. Returning projectiles pierce all targets. Now, what our buddy Xantho POE has done is he's tested both with Nagahamu's as well as with Molten Strike. And as he's tested whether or not the projectiles from both the Nagahamu's flame as well as from Molten Strike return to you, whether or not they do or not. And the answer is they do. For Molten Strike, they return to you. For Nagahamu's flame, which I'm sure I'm saying the name wrong, and one of you will correct me, it essentially populates twice as many projectiles. It fires almost like 2 layers of projectiles. So this is a lot of projectiles that are being fired out for Molten Strike or for Nagahamu's flame. You've got to have Vengeant Cascade allocated, right? You've got to have it anointed, and so that's a big deal. But potentially what this is this is like a 1.5 to 2.5, depending on how you're setting up your Molten Strike. Like, this is just straight up double damage on Molten Strike. It might even be more than double damage on Molten Strike, because oftentimes when there's actually a calculator that's available. I'll link that down below for calculating your Molten Strike DPS. Not every single hit off of the projectiles of Molten Strike are actually counted as hits and factor into DPS, right? Because not every ball is actually going to make contact with your target. Well, in this scenario, when you fire out all of these balls and they come back to the targeted location, like, that's huge, right? That's absolutely huge for damage, to essentially being able to guarantee a wave of hits from your Molten Strike. So there's a lot of different ways that you can play this. You can play this on hit. You can play this poison. You could play this flat physical. You could play this with life gain on hit and do some delve shenanigans, which Molten Strike has seen plenty of that back in the day. So that could be really interesting to see. And I'm actually thinking about league starting for myself with a build that will morph into this. But more on that maybe later. Okay. That's why I've got Viper Strike builds pulled up, because I'm just taking a look at how people are building poison trees at the moment. Also, Molten Strike builds. How are people building those at the moment, which is kind of interesting to see how people are building those builds. All right, speaking of builds, let's really quickly, I'm not going to do a full meta overcap right here. I don't have the time to do that at the moment, but we will do that later on in the week. So as I promised earlier in the discussion, we will be taking a look in the future at the opening weekend meta. We'll take a look at like the first 3 days, and then we'll take a look, as we classically do, at 7 days, 1 week into the league, to see where people are at as players who only can play on weekends return back to the game. We'll see who pivots, if there's any major changes. The big thing that stands out to me, without getting into all of the details and doing all of the numbers, is just Bone Shatter. The fact that Bone Shatter is so high up where it's at. This is in softcore Crucible, by the way. In softcore Crucible, Juggernaut's 11% of the players out of 32,000 in softcore. That's a huge jump from where Juggernaut has been. When you swap it over to hardcore, Juggernaut's taking that top spot, 16%. And then there's a smattering of other things that are coming in relatively popular. But again, we're seeing Bone Shatter up here. Also, for anybody who said, Poisonous Concoction is absolutely dead, I just have to laugh at everybody. The rumors of Poisonous Concoction being dead are greatly exaggerated. There's actually potentially a couple of ways to play Poisonous Concoction where it's actually buffed this league. There's a couple of different ways to play it. So anyway, we'll see how Poisonous Concoction shakes up. But that was just something that I had to point out and I had to laugh at because a lot of people were saying, oh, Poisonous Concoction is dead. It's not dead. It's actually being played just as much in some leagues as some of the other more quote-unquote popular skills. Over in SSF, again, Bone Shatter is coming in the top spot. SRS coming in, Vortex with Cold. Toxic Rain, Fire Trap is in there as well. A lot of players are playing after Subtractum's build. A lot of players are still hanging out with RF because it's easy to get into. It's easy to gear, or relatively easy to gear, especially with some more added resistance on the passive tree now. Over in Hardcore Soul Self-Found, you got Bone Shatter coming in. Again, you got 18% of the league playing Juggernaut. More players are playing Juggernaut than any two other Ascendancies combined in Hardcore Solo Self-Found. Like, that's nuts. Yes, Juggernaut usually is strong, especially in Hardcore and popular, but that's pretty high. Over here in Ruthless, Juggernaut again, Bone Shatter again, and then over in Where's the Race Going On? Hardcore Soul Self-Found, Ruthless. You've got somebody actually coming in at 86, level 86 already over the opening weekend, level 85, level 84, level 84 is a whole bunch of them. 16% coming in with Juggernaut. You're not going to see many 5 links inside Ruthless, especially over the opening weekend, but in terms of the overall skills, what players are using, you've got Quick Step, which is now this new mobility skill that is added to Ruthless. I think it's dumb. I know a lot of you are just hearing nails on a chalkboard as I'm saying the word Ruthless. I just think it's dumb because if you're going to go with a game mode that's got 0 mobility skills, don't give us Quick Step. We're like, hey, you've got your get out of jail free mobility thing. Get rid of it. But anyway, that's a whole other thing. If you want Ruthless to be like the main Path of Exile, then add all of the mobility skills and don't make it different. If you want it to be its own thing, then make it its own thing and make it different. All right, other than that, for actual main stuff, what we've got going on is Holy Flame Totem, Raised Zombie, Flammability, Frost Bomb, indicating probably some mixture of Cold Dot, SRS, Frostbite. What else is in here? Cold Snap. Also Vortex, Creeping Frost, Raised Spectre, Righteous Fire, Flame Wall, which is good for a lot of different projectile builds, Wave of Conviction, Fire Trap, Sunder is up there, and Bone Shatter. So it's actually pretty interesting to see that Bone Shatter is not necessarily the single most played skill over there in Hardcore Solo Self-Found Ruthless. Okay, let's talk a little bit about some feedback on Crucible League. So this is a Twitter thread from NeverSink. For those of you who don't know who NeverSink is, if you're using a loot filter and it's not, an official default in-game loot filter, if somebody's like, hey, you need to get a loot filter, where do I go? You need to go get NeverSink's loot filter. This is NeverSink. Okay, that's who this is. So NeverSink has got this wonderful, beautiful, it's a very long, well thought out, very, dare I say, positive in terms of feedback. Not positive in that he's a, blind eye just appealing and loving everything about the league, but positive in the feedback that NeverSink is providing to grinding gear games with the complaints that are going on. He mentioned several different complaints. Currently, this is where he says in the 4th tweet, he says, from my experience, the league was not managing to achieve what the intended goal was, which was overall a crafting league. He says, currently and upsettingly, the league suffers from a series of different issues: balance, UI, rewards, meta progression, emergent effects. Then he says the bright side is I think this situation is both flexible and salvageable. However, I think GGG needs to react fast because the endgame situation is not good. I think this thread encapsulates a lot of what people are saying, whether that's via memes, whether that's via loud, angry shouting, insert jokes about pitchforks, etc. I think for the most part, what I've seen is I've been reading both the forums and Reddit. Folks, for the most part, have been pretty calm, pretty mild in terms of their outbursts. So that's good, but plenty of feedback, right? Plenty of feedback about Crucible missing loot. Plenty of feedback about Crucible. Feels like it's punishing to actually interact with as you level. Plenty of feedback about how at the end game stage, maybe it's not even rewarding to interact with monsters, but it's actually just better just to run past monsters in certain scenarios in the end game versions and the end game encounters. So there's a lot of different things to improve on. Some folks have even said that playing Crucible has made them want like Sanctum back, and that's just been interesting because I just have to say this is my own level of cynicism. A league in Path of Exile's development cycle is never more popular than right after it goes away. Literally the opening weekend of a new league is when the last league becomes the most popular thing on the planet. It's like in football, when a quarterback isn't playing well, the best quarterback in many fans' minds is the backup quarterback. Same thing in pitching. It's the guy whose elbow is injured. Once he gets back, the team will be perfect. In baseball, it's in all sorts of things. It's a human psychological phenomenon that whatever we think we're missing out on, we look back with rose-colored glasses, as it were, onto those previous memories or those desires of yesteryear or those things which we thought were actually terrible in the moment, and we can verifiably go back and check our post history and check our feedback and check videos where people have said, this is terrible, and then you see them streaming and saying, oh, I wish I could have that back. It's always very, very funny to see. Okay, on to the next thing. This is just a hilarious clip. This is something that happens from time to time in hardcore, for better or for worse. Sometimes when you're playing hardcore, you'll go in and you'll trade with somebody, and for better or for worse, good things can happen or bad things can happen. And there is a way that you can link to somebody in Path of Exile. You can soul link with them, and then you can activate your flasks. And by activating your flasks like Dodre's, that's going to kill you. There's now this link skill where your flasks apply to somebody else who's with you. So what happened here in this scenario is somebody says, hey, I need some help in the menagerie, and legitimately the person who's at the number 2 ranked spot in Hardcore Crucible Trade League, he goes there and gets soul linked and gets killed. The number 2 player didn't die to content like from Crucible, didn't die taking down Uber bosses, died trying to trade with a player and help somebody out that was decided they wanted to murder him. So anyway, so this happens from time to time in Path of Exile. There was a bug the last time I played Hardcore Trade for any length of time that this was a concern. There was a big concern because people were able to desecrate somehow. There was a bug going on where you could desecrate and summon specters inside your hideout, but like for some reason PvP was bugged or interacting, and so like the specters were essentially casting Detonate Dead. They were Detonate Dead specters that were casting. I could be forgetting or misrepresenting the details. But essentially somebody would show up. Necromancers are very popular, as you can imagine, in lots of different leagues throughout the history of Path of Exile. So it's not at all uncommon to be in a trade environment. Somebody comes to your hideout and you're trading with a Necromancer who's got a whole bunch of stuff following him around, zombies, specters, anyway. But there was a way to do it so that way you could essentially corpse explode these various minions that were part of your party, and they would deal damage to other players, and players needed to be on the watch for it because players were trying to kill each other. So I'm sharing this, yes, to encourage you to laugh. I'm also sharing this to encourage you to, if you are playing hardcore in any kind of party environment, in any kind of trade environment, to just be on the watch, to always be on the watch. It doesn't hurt to go to town to trade with people. I know it slows things down, but like if somebody invites you to go into a zone where damage can be dealt, on your own head be it. Like, be warned. Okay, there's some other things. Day 1 Crucible Discoveries, Tips, and Tricks. This was posted a day ago by KAJ. This is great. He says, disclaimer, everything in this post is subjective. As soon as I see something where somebody's actually trying to give, some disclaimers and some nuance to the conversation, that almost always is just good news for me. So it gets an upvote. It's very, very helpful to the overall general community to like layer things in nuance and say, hey, here's a statement, but here's some qualifying statements. That's always good. Okay, so there's a bunch of tips that are in here, okay? Whole bunch of tips. I'm not going to read through all these. There's videos and images, etc., included in this about how to craft, how to interact with the Crucible mechanic. I assume that a whole bunch of people are basically going to be making videos, etc., using either this information itself or their own discoveries that might overlap with KAJ's. So again, if you want to look through things, I know there are people in the G3 Discord who are looking at stuff and saying like, oh, I'm confused. How do I do this? How do I do that? If you're just looking for that info right now, it's available down below in the video description. I'm sure there's going to be more guides that are going to come out throughout the week about Crucible and how to take advantage of it, how to min-max it, etc. But if you're just looking for something right away and something that you can read maybe while you're at work, or you could put onto a text-to-speech reader, then this is it. Okay, last thing I'm going to cover for today before I talk about what I'm going to play for the league is going to be this post. This is pretty cool. 2 days ago, so opening weekend, opening day. Path of Exile just broke its concurrent Steam player peak with 161,544 concurrent players. And that's pretty cool. I got to say that that's pretty cool. There's a lot of players, a lot of new players, a lot of returning players. I've seen, I think, 3 different forum posts from players who are claiming to have been gone from the game for like multiple years, and now they're coming back and trying the game with Crucible. And so that's pretty cool. Here's the top post, by the way, 20K9 now, destroyed the record. So I don't know what the record is. Somebody on Steam is going to have to go and correct me. You can feel free to drop a comment down below with what the record is now. But this is pretty cool. On the one hand, it's awesome. It shows the Path of Exile is alive. This ought to motivate the Grinding Gear Games development team. I hope it's a big pat on the back, like, hey, there's an opportunity here. Please take that opportunity and run with it. Maybe make Path of Exile the super slow mode in Ruthless and just run with that, as well as make Path of Exile 1 the super speedy and fast mode and run with that. I don't know. It does seem to be that that's the biggest divide in the community right now. The big divide in the community used to be softcore, hardcore, and then once SSF was officially supported, the divide became, are you an SSF player? Are you a trade player? And now that Ruthless is out, it seems to be that there is something of a divide, not in terms of huge player numbers, because let's face it, there's not nearly the number of players who are playing Ruthless who are playing regular Path of Exile. There's a couple of us who are insane who have loved playing Ruthless. I saw Crip League started playing Ruthless. I saw a couple of other folks who had League started playing Ruthless. So there's a couple of us out there who are nuts and who like playing Ruthless. But let me transition that to say what my league start plans are going to be. I am debating playing something with this Vengeant Cascade stuff and trying to do maybe a Poison Molten Shell thing. I think that would be really cool. It's been a long time since I've played Molten Shell. And so maybe going something with Pathfinder and really abusing the heck out of flasks, maybe even leveling with Poisonous Concoction, just to see exactly how painful it is. I've talked a lot of smack about Poisonous Concoction and that its demise is greatly overrated. And so I feel like one thing that I need to do this league is to play it and see whether or not I can actually back that up in game. So Vengeant Crusade Pathfinder is one thing that I'm potentially thinking. And then another thing that I'm potentially thinking is just playing Devin. I'm going to mess up the numbers on Devin's build, so I'm not even going to say the numbers on Devin's name. But Devin's got a great Hot Stepper guide where you essentially use Bronze Lithe. You get a whole bunch of levels to Frostblink, and you just essentially run around and Frostblink stuff. Subtractum's build is an altered version of a Hot Stepper where he's taking advantage of Fire Trap in order to really take care of bossing. And so maybe I'll augment some things with Fire Trap in there. But Devin's build is actually able to take down tier 16 map bosses, no problem, just on Frostblink. So that's really cool. After playing an entire league of Ruthless with no movement abilities, playing a Flask Finder that would allow me to move really fast and jump around a whole bunch and use some movement skills and have insane attack speed to be spamming Molten Strike, or potentially playing something that just uses a movement skill as my source of damage. That's also pretty appealing. And then I did not get to really go ham with SRS, Poison SRS, during Ruthless because, I didn't have access to a lot of uniques. I was playing Ruthless hardcore solo self-found, and I didn't want to go into maps. I just wanted to play the campaign on a whole bunch of different characters last league. So I might want to do that as well because I like summons. So that seems to be the plan for me. I will be playing Softcore Trade League here throughout the rest of the week, off and on. I will be streaming from time to time. And of course, like I said, we're going to do some meta updates. We'll do some more tips, tricks, and some more reaction videos throughout the week. But thanks so much for joining us today, everybody, for the discussion. I hope the ongoing 321 Crucible League gets all of these different complaints fixed. I hope it just ends up being the best league for all of us. The good news is Grinding Gear Games generally is quick to respond after opening weekend. I would assume that either by the time this video is out or shortly after, over the next several hours, we will have some level of communication from Grinding Gear Games saying, we've heard your feedback. This is where we're at. We're excited about new peak concurrent players on Steam. Here's what we're thinking about doing with the rest of the league. Even I could even hear something that goes, you know what, we're not going to tweak major things, but maybe we're going to tweak minor things, and here's the minor things that we're going to tweak. Even that, I think, could actually go a long way to improve Crucible League and make it a very fun league heading on into the summer, heading into ExileCon, heading into more news about Path of Exile 2, and heading into a development cycle where they'll be competing potentially with full-on release Diablo 4. So, thanks so much for joining us. I hope the ongoing 321 Crucible League is the league. A Mirror of Calandra drops for you. Thanks for watching that video. If you'd like more information on any of our discussion points today, you can see them down below in the video description. If you'd also like to join our Discord or support our Patreon, you can do so with the links down below. Thanks again, and big shout out to all of our Patreon supporters.